Hi, my name is DeWald. I'm the Chancellor of the Washington State University Health Sciences Spokane campus. I'm glad to have you here today. We're joined today by one of our premier researchers, Dr. Mary Paine, who's in the College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. She's an associate professor in the college, and we're glad to have you here today, Dr. Paine.
Thank you.
If you would, give us a little bit of background about your educational experience and then what brought you to Washington State University.
Yes, certainly, I can do that. Yes, so I received my degree in pharmacy at Oregon State University in Corvallis and became a licensed pharmacist. I worked for about 3 years in hospital pharmacy, which was exciting. It was interacting with other healthcare professionals, which I learned later was good training. But at the end of the day, I still needed some more intellectual stimulation, more challenges, let's say, or scientific challenges maybe. There's plenty of challenges in the practice of pharmacy, but I was more interested in the science, I think. I know now. My father was a professor there at Oregon State in forestry, and so I grew up around that, so I knew what it meant. And, oh, that's kind of neat. So I thought maybe I'd like to get my PhD and then go back to OSU and teach. But that's not at all what happened. Anyway, so I applied to various programs around the country and ended up going to University of Washington, just up the I-5 corridor. Yeah. Received wonderful training there in the Department of Pharmaceutics. Really, as I think back, kinds of studies that would never go on now, clinical studies. And then from there, I felt like I needed to know more. I didn't think I knew enough. So I completed a postdoc at University of Michigan, where I learned a cell culture study, a cell culture technique that expressed a drug metabolizing enzyme that I thought would complement my existing skills from the UW. And then so I was there for about 2 years and all ready to stay on another year, because I did have a fellowship as well. My postdoc supervisor had the opportunity to move to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and he was the director of the Clinical Research Center there at UNC Chapel Hill. So I moved with him and moved his lab, the only one that moved from his group. That was a lot of, sometimes I think not knowing is a good thing. So I moved the lab and got everything set up for him and managed his lab for probably 5 or so years, but because we're located right there in the Clinical Research Center, he said, well, you want to run these clinical studies having to do with grapefruit juice? So I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so, like I said, having that training as a hospital pharmacist, interacting with different healthcare providers, it all came back, and so I would run those clinical studies, interacting with nurses, dietitians, pharmacists. They had their own pharmacy there. Yeah. And so that was so easy to run those studies. So I really got the clinical research bug then. And then I moved over to the School of Pharmacy there, got a tenure track position, my own R01 funding to pursue this research on my own, and I with the background in the grapefruit juice effect, that was great foundation for my own independent funding, and I broadened it to natural products, drug interactions. And the good news is my postdoc supervisor decided to go on into something completely different. So he was out of the natural product world. So good for me. Yes. Fortunate for me. And so yeah, I was there for 14 years at UNC Chapel Hill. That's where I met our now Dean Pollack here. He was one of my mentors, still is. He was one of them that helped me write grants. I learned a lot of grant writing from him, and as well as teaching. So he taught the graduate level pharmacokinetics courses over there. So I took that over for him. So I worked with him quite a lot. Of course, I was very sad to see him go, and stayed on for a few years. I was perfectly happy to stay there. And then I got a call from him and said, why don't you come out and see what you think? So I thought, yeah, why not? It's in the Northwest. I opportunity to be closer to family.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that's what I chose to do, and no regrets. I say my reason, people ask me, why would you leave a top tier, it was a number 2 pharmacy school back then, it's now 1, I think it's still number 1, and why would you leave? People would ask me, why'd you leave there? Well, I say 3 reasons, and one is Dean Pollock, second is to be closer to family, and the third reason was to help rebuild a College of Pharmacy program,
Mm-hmm.
and have an impact, make decisions, be heard. So yeah, here I am, 5 years
Well,
later.
It's great that you're here, and your story aligns with Dean Pollock's in many ways. So we're glad that he recruited you here from North Carolina. So you've had a great background, and it positioned you very well to expand your natural products research and looking at the natural products and drug interactions. So we understand that you have been very successful with National Institutes of Health funding, but you're actually leading a center of excellence. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, of course, yes. So it was probably, I think the RFA, request for applications, came out about summer of 2014. And I had been here maybe a year.
Okay.
Of course, I knew it was there, and I didn't think, oh, I don't know if, should I be really leading this grant? And my long-standing collaborator at University of North Carolina at Greensboro, he was, so I hooked up with him when I was back there, natural products chemist.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I got our R01s back there, and anyway, so he and I were talking, and I said, I don't think this is a good timing for me to be leading this grant. Of course, I'd like to do it. And no more than a couple days later, I got a call from University of Washington School of Pharmacy, where I trained,
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, Mary, you want to help us with this? And they're well known in drug-drug interactions, that group, as far as developing guidances for FDA guidance in drug-drug interactions. And so between their expertise in drug-drug interactions and mine and Nick's in natural product drug interactions,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this will work. And so it was a co-PI arrangement at the time, and Dr. Danny Shen was the contact PI. So I learned a lot from him, how to write a multi-center grant and how to, yeah, he's very, I call him a genius as far as, all these things to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what happened, which happens a lot, is good people get lured away to other institutions. And Danny went into semi-retirement, we knew that. And so, long story short, another key person left the institution, left UW. And so NCCIH, which is National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, who funds the program, said, okay, well, we're happy for the grant to be transferred over to WSU, and oh, by the way, you have to be sole PI, saying this to me.
Wow.
So that was really daunting to start with, and that happened midway through year 2 of the grant.
Okay.
So ever since, I've been, and by definition, I've had to lead the administrative core. There's 4 cores to this thing. There's the pharmacology core, which I have led from the beginning. Administrative core, which is self-explanatory, but by definition, I have to lead that. There's a analytical core, which is where a lot of the natural products chemistry takes place. And then we have an informatics core,
Wow.
which is responsible for developing a data repository and a public access portal for, right now, for researchers. Because we were talking about communication.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of grants, just publish and present your work at meetings, but we had to go further than that, which I think was very smart on NCCIH's part. We want to be able to educate the public because, as I say to people, who's paying for this? It's the taxpayers.
Yes.
They need to get something out of this.
It's a great program, and it's interesting the way that it's been established, and then you're leading this multi-institutions. So tell us a little bit more about, so as you communicate out to the public, what are some things that your team has found that you think is pretty important because it speaks to the natural products and the way that they interact with drugs, and kind of that would heighten our awareness of those potential or real interactions?
Yes, so natural products, which do include, it actually includes food, like the grapefruit juice is one example. I call it the poster child. The other one is St. John's wort, which is a dietary supplement. Yeah, because they come from, they're derived from natural products, right? But unfortunately, I think a lot of the public have this perception that because they're from natural products, that means they're safe.
Right.
And so I'm coming kind of from the Debbie Downer perspective, in that if you're taking these natural products with your conventional medications, and by that I mean something that your doctor prescribes to you, or even over-the-counter medications, you take these things, and how do you know there's not some interaction? So what I mean by interaction, the natural product, we're looking at natural products as precipitants of these interactions. So they right now we're looking at them as, from the perspective, how do they alter the pharmacokinetics of the object drug? That is, how does it alter the absorption, distribution, metabolism, or excretion of these drugs?
Yeah.
So you can either increase or decrease these processes, ADME, absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, increase or decrease. You could increase or decrease blood concentrations of the drug. So it could lead to extreme case toxicity, or just exaggerated pharmacological effects, side effects. You know, people don't like to take drugs if there's side effects.
Yeah.
Or the other direction, it could lead to therapeutic failure, like what St. John's wort can do to some drugs. So that's one thing I'd like to communicate is, if I could say it in a minute or less, is just because they're natural does not necessarily mean they're safe, these products. And the other nugget is that because they're not regulated like drugs, so for drug products, we know exactly how much of the active ingredient and inactive ingredient is in that single capsule or pill to the, I don't know what percentage, but I'm guessing it's probably less than 1% variability. We know exactly what's in that. We know what's in that particular bottle. We know what's in that brand and all these other brands and bottles. So we know everything about it. And so what's on the label is true. But with natural products, because they're not regulated like drugs, they are regulated, but not like drugs. And so, yeah, they have to say, there's an act called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which was passed in 1994, which kind of loosened regulations, kind of a little bit. And so really what they have to do, according to FDA, is they have to state on their label that this product cannot be used to treat, diagnose, or mitigate disease. They have to put that on their label. But I don't want to at all want people to take home that natural products industry are bad. They're not bad. But some of them can massage that language, and people misperceive that this natural product is going to treat my cancer or hepatitis C or whatever. And to me, that's really scary. So what we want to do is, one of the deliverables of this U54, it's called U54 Center, or the Center of Excellence, is to develop recommended approaches on how best to study these interactions. So like I mentioned earlier, there's drug-drug interaction guidance that the FDA puts out, and it's based on scientific, the science. And pharmaceutical industry just follows those to a T because they want to get their drugs approved, right? And so we've been charged to develop approaches akin to that for natural product drug interactions, to somehow standardize the procedures. Natural products could contain, we don't know exactly what's in all of those things, and the composition can vary between different brands, even two capsules within the same bottle, potentially, I think. So the variability is huge of the active and both inactive ingredients. So it's really hard to predict what might happen. So for example, this brand of grapefruit juice may not act like this one because the active ingredients in this one is a lot lower than this one. And because they don't have to say how much of these active ingredients are in there, it's so unpredictable what could happen.
So it sounds like, and to me, your research is incredibly relevant to much of the population that probably is taking different prescriptions, maybe even on a daily basis, and they're just not sure about what foods that they might have, or what, as you were saying, grapefruit juice, if they take that. That's been publicized enough that people have an awareness of that. But it sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done understanding how these natural products interact with drugs. So you're developing a database of understanding about that, and you're also looking at how you make judgments and the processes that we use about how those drugs interact with the natural products. So again, it seems very relevant to me. So as you think about your center, are you even planning in the future, like hopefully submitting for continuation of the funding from the National Institutes of Health?
Yes.
So
yes.
tell me about that, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are in our 4th year of this grant, and so yes, we need to be thinking about renewal. And I was fortunate to attend the NCCIH Council back in June. I was there actually at FDA on a sabbatical, and my program officer invited me to, why don't you come along, and oh, by the way, could you give me a couple of slides to summarize what you've been doing for the last 4 years? So
you can do a sabbatical at the Food and Drug Administration then. That's really cool.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wonderful experience, and I managed to keep up with things here, and the center managed to do that. But it's a great experience. And so because I was there then, I thought, okay, yeah, I'll go, happy to go over there and just see my program officer present and advocating for renewal. And I was ecstatic that the council unanimously voted to renew it.
Very good.
So yes, but the catch is we have to go in and it'll be competing renewal. So we'll have to write a new proposal.
And that'll happen in the next year to 2 years, right?
Yeah, I'm expecting the RFA to probably be released this summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you envision that that'll still be probably administered from Washington State University, and you'll serve as the director?
Yes.
And the principal investigator
Yes.
of that? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And that is my plan.
So
I have not heard any objections.
It's exciting, and you have a great vein of research. So are there particular areas that you think you should be focusing on as you move forward in the future?
Yeah, so the first, one of our charges during the first year was to identify 4 to 6 natural products to study.
Okay.
And we couldn't just pick our favorite one off the shelf. We all had our favorites, and you can't do that. You have to develop a systematic approach. That was a pharmacology course called Charge. How do you do this? But we did, and it's been published. And out of that, we started with 46 potential candidates. And out of that came, the 4 that came out of that was green tea, golden seal, cannabis, and what was originally licorice. Originally was licorice, but that's been changed to kratom because another botanical center is studying licorice, and so we thought it best to move on to something else.
Okay.
And kratom is a new-ish natural product. It's been in the U.S. for, I would say, at least 10 years. That is believed to have opioid effects.
Okay.
And so a common use is to treat opioid withdrawal. So a lot of people take it, they claim it works, and I don't at all want people to think that I don't think these things work, that natural products don't work. I think they do, some of them do.
Mm-hmm.
The science just isn't there. And I'm going off tangent, but I think about the natural products that, like traditional Chinese medicine, or in India, where they've used these natural products for centuries.
Yes.
I believe they work. And why is that? They know a lot about it. A lot of them they're taken as a tea, they're inhaled, they're smoked.
Mm-hmm.
So you bypass the oral route and everything that goes on in the gut and the liver before it gets to the systemic circulation. But a lot of those products here, it's a leaf, you grind it up and you stick it into a capsule. Is that really going to be absorbed? I think a lot of times it's not even absorbed.
Yeah.
But there's a placebo effect, which is a whole new, another area of science. But I digress, so I'll come back, and you asked me about the future.
Yeah, but I think you make a really important point here, because what you're talking about is we still have a lot of work to do in understanding how natural products work, and it's often combinatorial. It's not a single compound in
Right.
a natural product. So we have a lot of work to do there, but your work is really helping us to understand how that maybe even a complex natural product is interacting with a very specific drug, if I'm understanding that
Yes.
correctly.
Yes.
Okay. And then as you think about it, so you had to identify kind of the four lead natural products. Are you going to extend that, Dr. Paine, or are you thinking of maybe you might pivot a little bit?
I'm thinking now, because cannabis and kratom are so hot and
Yes.
very much in the public eye,
Yes.
it's caught the FDA's attention, even our administration. I think that's probably where we're going to go.
Okay.
There is more work to do with green tea. We did find we had an unexpected interaction with green tea.
Okay.
Golden seal, we're waiting for the rest of the data. So I should say that what are we doing? We have our natural products chemistry group that does some really, really neat stuff. Metabolomics or chemometrics, metabolomics, targeted, untargeted. They could explain it a lot better than I can, but with whatever natural product, they acquire 20, 30 different products, and they submit that to their chemometrics, metabolomics approach. Forgive me for Nick and Nadja if I misspeak. And they can tell us how similar two products are,
Yep.
or how different, based on the principal component analysis in this 2D graph, sometimes 3D. And they can tell if it's adulterated. So that's another whole area, because these things could be adulterated. They could be contaminated.
Sure.
They could be adulterated, contaminated. They could contain heavy metals. Who knows? And they can figure that out. And so it's their job to source all these different products of a given natural product, and they'll select the clinical product for us which we conduct those studies here, except for cannabis, because we want to make sure it's safe to give to people. And so they submit it for all these different, contaminations, and make sure it's really what it's claimed to be, and give us enough quantities to test both in people and in vitro. We have some in vitro assays to test whether they inhibit whatever drug metabolizing enzyme, let's say, or transporter. Make some predictions, see what's going to happen, mathematical modeling, try to make some predictions what's going to happen, and then, a model is no good unless we can validate it. So that's where we go into the clinical studies, and which it brings me full circle.
Yeah.
Which that's really what excites me about the research, is what happens in people.
Yes. Well, it's great for you actually to kind of walk us through the range of your career, which as a pharmacist, then you moved into the research, and then it connects back to the pharmacy and the pharmaceutical sciences. It sounds like there's a lot of interesting and exciting things to do in the future. We are really glad you're here at Washington State University, and I just want to thank you for taking a little while. I think we're going to have you back, because I think we can expand on a few of these areas. I think the public would be very interested in some of the research that you're doing. So Dr. Mary Paine, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for joining us today to talk a little bit about pharmaceutical sciences.